Greetings, dear readers, and welcome to this tour de force through the Folio Society's beloved Myths and Legends series. This series shares a thematic theme of classic mythological retellings and a visually similar design, being large 10-inch by 7-inch volumes with a quarter leather binding over cloth-covered boards, and in most cases contemporary illustrations were commissioned for each of the works. We'll open our tour with a single-volume edition of the Greek myths, retold by Robert Graves. This book was first released in 1996, and it's a fairly scholarly study of the myths, relating them to the way the ancient Greeks lived and thought. Each god or goddess is introduced as they're born, and each tale is followed by an interpretation of its origin and significance. And Graham Baker provides the lovely illustrations. I'd also like to show here a comparison between the original books and the smaller multi-part volumes that Folio also released a few years later for some of the books in this series. Whilst the text is identical and the most obvious difference is the size, I believe the most important distinction is in the illustrations. You'll find that the single volume editions contain beautiful two-tone images, whilst the illustrations in the smaller sets are produced more cheaply in black and white. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey were the next two volumes produced in 1996 and 1998, using the translation of Robert Fagles, which was the preeminent English translation of the 1990s. Fagles uses a loose 5-beat line, and I find his translation both clear and sensitive to the magic of literary techniques such as alliteration. Again, these volumes are illustrated by Baker, and they feature printed map end papers. Not all the volumes were leather-bound. Some of the brightly coloured ones, like mine, seem to be buckram. The collection of British myths and legends was released in 1998. The tales drawn together in this book by Richard Barber are from a wide range of medieval sources, spanning the centuries from the dawn of Christianity to the age of the Plantagenets. The Norse gods, which peopled the Anglo-Saxon past, survive in Beowulf. Cuchulainn, Taliesin and the magician Merlin take shape from Celtic mythology. And we have stories of saints such as Helena, who brought a piece of the true cross to Britain, and Joseph of Arimathea, whose staff grew into the Glastonbury thorn. There are a few illustrations by John Vernon Lord. Next we have the two volumes of the Icelandic Sagas, which were published in 1999 and 2002, that are edited, introduced and partly translated by Magnus Magnusson. It's a lovely collection. The first volume contains 3 of the big 5, with Egil's Saga, the Ebyggja Saga and Jarl Saga, along with other gems, including the stories that relate to the discovery and attempted colonisation in the Americas in the 10th century, and one of the Sagas of the Poets, which features 2 poets in love with the same woman. It's not a happy ending. The second volume rounds this out with the remaining 2 of the big 5, Hretti's Saga and the Lexdala Saga, and several other tales. The fabulous illustrations are by John Vernon Lord, and the end paper maps are drawn by Reginald Pigott. The Legends of King Arthur was released in 2000. This is introduced by Richard Barber, and it features a number of different translations of the Arthurian legends. It includes extracts ranging from the History of Kings of Britain by Geoffrey of Monmouth and the Death of King Arthur, to the Romance of Tristan and Isolde by Joseph Bédier, the High Book of the Grail, and Parsifal by Wolfram von Eschenbach. 16 full-page illustrations are by Roman Pisarev. Myths and Legends of India followed in 2001, a compilation from a range of sources that was selected and introduced by William Redis. It includes a long section from Lal's English version of the Mahabharata, and the plates in this volume reproduce traditional Indian art rather than being commissioned directly for this volume. A few years later, in 2003, Folio released the lovely Myths and Legends of the Ancient Near East by Rachel Storm. The boards are a lovely linen cloth, and it includes 17 delightful colour illustrations by Jane Ray. The stories range over several civilizations, where legend merges with history. From Daniel thrown to the lions, to the Assyrian epic of Gilgamesh, to the heroic feats of the Amazons, to Midas and his golden touch, and the Arabian Nights entertainments. Legends of the Ring was released in 2004 and is edited by Elizabeth McGee. This volume is based on the ring legends of Scandinavia, including the Volsungs and the Eddas, and also the ring legends of Germany, such as the Nibelungenlied. Illustrations are by Simon Brett. With this particular volume, I have to say I was very disappointed with Folio's decision to put all the pictures in a clump here in the centre. I understand this design saves money, but when someone's buying an expensive book like this, it's unexpectedly disappointing. Fortunately, it only happens in this one volume of the series. In 2005 brought us the Epics of the Middle Ages, edited and introduced by Richard Barber and illustrated again by John Vernon Lord. These are stories with champions rooted in real events, including the Song of Roland and William of Orange, inspired by the exploits of Charlemagne's reign centuries before, and El Cid, the story of Rodrigo Diaz of Bivar, a noble knight caught up in the vicious struggle between Christians and Moors in Spain. These are stories of historical figures, transmuted by the epics into the superheroes of legend. Celtic Myths and Legends was compiled in 2006 by acclaimed folklorists Caitlin and John Matthews, with more lovely illustrations by Jane Ray. It's organised into 8 sections. Beginnings, which are Irish, British, Cornish and Manx. Quests and Adventures, the Deeds of Cuchulainn, the Story of Colonel Gwibenach, the Adventures of Fionn McCool, the 4 Branches of the Mabinogi, Legends of King Arthur's Court, and Visions, Saints and Other Worlds. Legends of the Grail in 2007 was also edited by Richard Barber and illustrated by John Vernon Lord. This volume collects the 5 great medieval masterpieces, simply retold in elegant modernisations. We have Chrétien de Troyes to Malory, the romances that tell of Percival, Gawain, Lancelot and Galahad in their quest for the Holy Grail. Legends from Ancient Rome, released in 2008, is edited by Lawrence Norfolk and illustrated by Graham Baker. It includes all the most iconic stories, drawing on Plutarch, Virgil, Livy and Ovid amongst others, but also lesser-known traditions, including some of the more bizarre Roman superstitions, such as the Lupercalia, in which youths dressed in animal skins and smeared with dog blood would whip female onlookers with strips of goat skin to promote fertility. Myths and Legends of Russia, released in 2009, is a highly sought-after volume in this series due to the particularly exquisite silhouette illustrations by Nerud Putapipat. The 170 tales within are taken from Afanasiev's record of orally transmitted folk stories, with an accessible translation by Norbert Gutermann. Finally, in 2001, we have this odd little volume of Irish myths and legends. It's the same size as the others, but the spine design doesn't match. However, I included it in my set. It's a reproduction of a very old volume. The stories were compiled by Lady Gregory, and the preface is by William Yeats, but the 12 lovely illustrations by Gillian Tamaki are new for this volume. Thanks for watching, and I'd love it if you shared some of your favourite Myths and Legends series in the comments section below, because I've got a huge library of world folklore, and I'm trying to decide which set to cover next. Till next time!